Hi, this is the intro video to the After School Manager. It's going to be a very quick intro just to get you up and running, get students in, get attendance entered, and we're going to leave out some of the finer points, and those will be covered in a later video. For now, notice that I am using a fake system here, obviously. That way we can mess around with it and not ruin your real data. You'll notice this is web-based, so when you're registered, you'll receive a registration email. It'll have your username, your password, and this URL, your real URL, and a link to this video as well, just to get you up and running quickly. So when you go to your site, you'll get a login page that looks like this. Looks like every other login page you've ever seen. It'll have a place for a username, a place for a password, and then a place for school year. And so as we move forward with you using the software, we'll keep adding years there, and if you ever need to go back, you can go back years and look at your data. Okay? If you ever forget your password, you go to the forgot password link, and you type in the email that we registered you with, verify that you're not a chat bot, and click go, and you can recover your password. Okay? So as I said, you should be receiving a username and password in your email. I'm going to pretend that just happened. I click here. I sign in. And the very first thing I see is my dashboard. Okay? We will cover this in just a second, what all these things here mean. For right now, though, let's just talk about the things that are up here at the top. So these are some quick links to places that we're going to talk about in a few seconds. So the report center, you can always get home from any page. These things on the left sort of mirror these here and these links here. Okay, it'll all make sense in a second. You have a profile. So if you look over here to the right, the upper right, you can see you can sign out and you can go to edit profile. So if I go to edit profile, it gives me my user profile. And you'll notice, I could change my user ID. You're allowed to change that if you want. Doesn't matter to us. If somebody already has that user ID, you'll get a warning, so you can't really mess anything up. And then there's your first name, middle name, last name. The email address, you can also update that if you get a new email address. Some of these may be grayed out because they're only for use by us, right? You're a site admin now. I don't want you turning yourself into a super admin, so we kind of gray those out. You could change your password here very easily, and so on. Some other things that are either controlled by the district or by us. If you look down here, well, we don't need to talk about those in a second. Just know that if you were a user who needed access to multiple sites, we could give you access to multiple sites. The one I'm logged in as right now just has access to a single site. And you'll also notice that these are fake sites, right? Acme Middle's not a real school, and Lincoln sounds like a real school, but it's an Acme Unified, so it's fake. A few other preferences, we'll just skip those for now. And some favorite reports, skip those for now. It'll make sense when we go into reports. So that's that. On a side note, if you ever find yourself using a small screen and you need some more space, these little guys here will give you some more space. Okay. This page isn't so bad, but once you get to some of the pages that have a lot of students on them, you may wish for some extra real estate. If you're new to the after-school world, but you've been in schools, you know that things work in fiscal years. So, July 1st to June 30th of the following year. The problem with that is that in after school, recently, as of a couple of years ago, they started looking at things in calendar years. So this will also make sense in a few seconds, but just know that you can always look at the fiscal year. So this is fiscal year 17-18, and the 2 calendar years that surround that, right? Because 17-18 will cover 2 calendar years, and a calendar year is just January of a certain year to December, as opposed to the fiscal year. So you'll see I have calendar 2017, calendar year 2018, and fiscal year. Okay. So enough of that. That's all the background information you need. Let's just get into what we need to do. On your home page, your dashboard we call it, you will see a bunch of data. None of that makes sense yet, because we haven't told you how to enter students and how to add attendance. So the main things you're going to do are right here in these 6 orange links. And in fact, if you look at the right side, these are things that you're not going to look at too often anyway. So we can go ahead and skip these for a second, and we'll concentrate on these. So you have reports you can run. You have a student master list where you can edit all your students. But really, when you log in daily, you're just going to go to attendance. So enter attendance, takes me to a different page, and it is my activity list. The activity list is a list of activities. You may call them rosters or groups or classes, it doesn't matter. It's just a container to hold students. Okay? So you'll notice on this fake site I have, first of all, you can have after school, you can have before school. Remember that you only enter before school information if you have a before school grant. So if you're running an AM program but it's not funded, don't put it in here. You'll also see upcoming activities, expired activities, and deleted activities. Okay. Let's just create a new activity and you'll see what those mean. So you'll notice I have some activities and they have some information, but it's best just for us to start adding a new activity. So I'm going to add a new activity. It's going to ask me if it's AM or PM. Most likely you'll pick PM unless you know for a fact you have a funding source for before school. I'll click that. And it asks me the activity type. Well, I can't change that right now. Everything on this page, aside from activity title, is optional. So if I give it an activity title, and I'm just going to call this My New Activity, and it bears saying now that you can do these any way you want. So we have some schools that say, well, I'm going to put all my first graders in an activity, and they call it first grade. We have some that just say, I'm not going to worry about all this activity stuff. I'm just going to say, general attendance, and all my kids are going to go in there. And yet we have other schools that say, well, we're going to have an activity for CASP tutoring. Okay, you can do it any way you want. I'll explain in a second why you can do it any way you want, and it's not going to affect the numbers at all. But I'm just going to use a generic name here and call it My New Activity. Okay. You can select some categories here, and these are just for reports later. They don't affect the activity or the attendance in any way, but later on when you want to group some student reports in interesting ways, you can use this here. So I could just say that, well, this new activity is going to be, academic enrichment. And I could do that. You could select more than one if you wanted to, and we'll track that. Again, everything else aside the activity title is optional, but I could give it a start and end date. Okay, so right now it defaults to the entire school year, but I could say, today is let's see, I could say, May 1st 2018 to, let's go, I don't know, 6-7. Okay, I could also give it a weekly schedule, so I could just say, well, it runs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but not Saturday and Sunday because we don't have a supplemental grant. And you could do that, or you could just say, well, I don't want them entering attendance on Wednesday because this activity just runs, these days. When we get to the attendance page, you'll see why this matters, but it is optional. And you can have an activity leader. So if you have users at your site, you could say, well, this is John E's activity, in case you want to track that later. But again, it doesn't matter in terms of what attendance is counted. So let me just click Save. You'll notice that activity just shows up here. 0 current enrollments because it's brand new, and it's just an empty container. So now that we've done that, this should be sort of self-explanatory. Upcoming activities, if I gave it a start and end date, would just mean that the activity hasn't started yet, and so it would be listed here. As soon as that day rolls around, it would move from upcoming activities to this here. And of course, once an activity ends, it moves into expired activities. And the reason for that is just that we had some schools who had just tons of activities and they wanted to remove the clutter. So again, you don't have to use that. You could use the default first and last dates, and then you don't have to worry about any of these things. The only other thing to mention before we move forward is that in order to pass audits, we can't delete anything from the system. We can hide it from you. We can't delete it. So if I were to go here and say, well, I'm going to go ahead and delete my activity, well, it's now gone, but it's never really gone. So I go to deleted activities, you can bring it back, right? So aside from manually unchecking attendance, nothing in the system is ever deleted. So if you ever can't find it, you can give us a call and we can find it for you. Okay. So let me just go ahead and click attendance since we have this new roster. And as expected, there's no students in here. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to want to do is add students. Now, that's a big question. How do we add students? Well, you could type them in. In fact, if I click this add student, you'll see you can type them in by hand, right? You can search for the student. If you already have some students loaded and you know you're creating a new activity and you know that kid's in another activity, you can search for that student. You can search last year's rosters, once you get a little further into the system. You can set up feeder schools and whatnot. What happens most of the time, though, is at the beginning, you have a new program and you say, well, I need to upload these 100 kids. I don't want to type them in by hand. We are actually working on an automatic upload for you where you can just take an Excel sheet and load it in there with all your kids. For now, though, if you had that Excel sheet, since we don't have that feature, you can just email that to us and we'll upload it for you the first time. Okay, that way you get all your students. And then later on, if you have like one kid come in, well, then you can just type that kid in by hand, right? No need to do an upload for one kid. Okay, so now since I've set this site up already, I'm just going to go ahead and click search for student. And if I had uploaded your roster for you, this is how you would do it anyway. So I wouldn't put them into a class for you. I would put them into the system, and then you would come here, go search for student, and it would give you a list of all the kids that I uploaded for you. Okay, if this list was rather long, you could filter it down. You could say, I only want second graders, or you can search by CSIS ID, and it will just try to auto-fill this for you, so you can search for a specific student. The same thing with last name and first name. If I started, a T, well, I know there's a student called Tester there, right? It's that guy there, and so on. You can say when you wanted them to start the program. So, as an example, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say, well, today is 5/28, but I want to get them to start 8:41. Okay, and that's the list. I haven't filtered it out at all. I will click this little guy here. I will enroll students, and now you will see all these students in my roster. Okay, now they are there. Before I show you the magic of entering attendance, which you can probably guess by seeing this, it's just going to be check boxes, right? Just know that this screen gets small, as I said, so I could do this, and now, well, I'm wasting all this space right here. So you look at this little bar here, and you can make this as big or as small as you want. Okay, if you were using a certain computer at a school site and you forgot, you didn't have time to enter attendance, you had to do it from home, and at home you have a different screen size, well, you could have more or less real estate here. And if you click this little icon here, it will try to guess how big your screen is and then resize appropriately, right? So if you're using a different computer and you came to this one, you said, oh no, that's too long, that doesn't look right. Well, you could just click that guy and it'll do it for you. Okay, and this little icon's just to hide and show this thing in case you need even more space. So we've got students in. Let's just go from left to right before we take attendance. In fact, no, let's just take attendance. We'll go here, right? I click all, I uncheck anyone that's not there, and that's it. Okay, I go there, right? Uh-oh, why can't I do that? Well, that's because that's in the future, so don't worry too much about that. As of when I'm recording, no, I'm sorry. We clicked Wednesday as a non-editable day, as we did for the weekends, correct? So when we created this activity, we said, nope, this doesn't run on those days, and so they're grayed out and you can't do it. Okay, and that's attendance in a nutshell. So you could go back weeks. So if this is a week of 5/28, I could go back a previous week, and I could do attendance there. Okay, I could also go forward here, but I'm not gonna let you do that, right? You can't take future attendance. And when you're using this calendar, it doesn't matter which day of the week you pick. If I pick the 23rd here, which is a Wednesday, it's still going to take me to that week. So don't worry about clicking exactly on the Monday of that week. You're okay. All right. Now in this system, I should mention, anytime you see this little, we call them hamburger icon, that means that there are some extra options that we're going to show you. So you go there, go there. We'll look at those in just a second. If you are running a supplemental grant, weekends, holidays, or whatever, you have specific money set aside, and you have to tell us and CDE whether it was a 3-hour or 6-hour program. And the way you do that is, let's pretend here that, I set these as non-clickable days. Let's pretend that I was able to click them. You have to tell us if they were 3-hour or 6-hour. Okay, you'll know if you run a 6-hour program because you run it 6 hours, and you'll know that you were supposed to be getting extra money for it. So just make sure these are clicked. They're very easy to change after the fact, but just try to get them done right the first time. And so as you know, if you've been running a program, you are supposed to keep some sort of proof that the kids were in the program, aside from just clicking, right? Because this isn't really proof just because you clicked it. And so usually the way that's done is sign in, sign out sheets. If you have your own, go ahead and keep using those. You don't have to use ours. But if you wanted to use ours, the advantage is that this roster that you set up gets printed on here. And we have various different ones. We can create new ones if you have a custom one you want, but let me just go ahead and show you what we've seen so far. So here's a weekly sign-in, sign-out sheet. I can filter it out. I can just say, you know, certain kids or walkers pick up bus riders, but I'm just going to click all. And in a second, that should pop up. There it is. Okay, and that's what it looks like. These early release codes and times we won't cover in this video. It's an advanced feature. If you want to use it, I can tell you how to use it, but let's skip it for now. Just know that you get that same roster we just created, time in and time out, a place for a signature for, you know, parents signing kids out, or kid, you know, for high school kids, them signing themselves out and whatnot. And you could use that one. Again, just an example, because if I go to the next one here, another district asked if I could create a daily one, and the daily one does this. Same filters. I run it, and in a second that should pop up, and you'll notice it is a single day instead of a week, and a bunch of other stuff that they wanted. So name, grade level, sign in, sign out, early release code, and you could add your own early release codes here. This fake site doesn't happen to have any, but they'd be listed here if we set them, whether they were present or absent and whatnot. Okay. The point of all that is you're not limited by what you see here. You're welcome to use the ones we have here. If you have a different one that you'd like to use, let us know. We'll try to work that out. Moving on here. If you have tons of students, you might get more pages, so that would be there. We did the add students already. If I scroll down here, the reason these are hidden because they're not that useful. We won't go into the early release module, but that's how you get those times we just saw on the sign-in, sign-out sheets. You could sort the kids differently, right? I have grade level, last name, first name. You could do, you know, just last name, first name, regardless of grade level, and that's gonna, you know, put them in alphabetical. Let me go back here, and then results per page. Again, if you have tons of kids, you could change the page size, but these are options you're not going to use very often. So the only other thing, since I already showed you how to take attendance, is, let me go to the current week again. We have those kids there. Just know that even though this save attendance button's here, if I modify attendance, let me go back a week. If I modify attendance and go that way, and let's say these 2 kids weren't there, these 3 kids weren't there, anything I do up here is going to save attendance. So you don't have to worry about clicking this, you know, leaving and coming back and saving it again. So long as it's in this area. If you start to click these guys here, it won't save it. So, you know, if I go forward a week or back a week, it'll save. A few other things on this page. We're spending a lot of time on this page because it's the one that's the most important. The other ones we're going to kind of gloss over, but you know, if I click on that, it's going to give me some information about the student, right? This is Elaine Venice. She's female, grade 10. It says days attended 0 because it hasn't recalculated itself yet, and we'll talk about that in a second because it's kind of a major issue. And then those things there, okay? Enrollment date, exit date, and whatnot. And then if I go over here, anywhere in our system where you see this little gear icon, it's usually under a column that says tasks. It will give you options. So I could edit the student. Let's just go ahead and do that. Remember, as soon as I click that, it saves attendance, so we're good. And I could give her a add and drop date. Now what happens if I go like this? I say she's in there from 5:29, oops, let's go 6:29 to 6:30. No, 5:29, there we go. And I click save. Nope. So the system's going to detect that you're doing something wrong. In this case, you're trying to give her an enrollment date after which we've added attendance. Okay, so it doesn't like that. It can't. You can't have attendance on one day and then be enrolled a few days later. The same thing with drop date, right? You can't give them a drop date even though they have attendance after that. So it'll try to catch everything you need. I'm not going to change anything here. Just know, you can set their CSIS ID, which is very important for our reporting. Got to have the CSIS ID. Can't do anything without them. CDE will send back our reports. They will just threaten to take away funding. Got to have the CSIS ID. Okay. First name, middle name, last name. These are optional here, but people like to use them in reports. So, if you're adding kids, especially if you're giving me rosters, try to include these because it makes life easier later on. If you accidentally put the wrong grade level, you can go ahead and change that, etc., etc. I'm going to skip this stuff here just for a moment because this is actually being expanded quite a bit. The parent contact info, right? We just kind of give you a free roaming text box. We've had tons and tons of requests to make it more formal, where you add a parent contact information, and you can add another one separately, and then that ties to reports, and we get to set who can the kid be released to and whatnot. Same thing with food allergies. Right now we can just put peanuts, and milk, and it's not that useful in this format. Okay, so we've been asked to make that way more robust, and we will. So that's why we're skipping it now, because I don't want to give you old information. So we could do that. We could modify the student's enrollment record, and that's that. The other things you can do here, you can transfer a student and you can relocate a student. What's the difference between transfer and relocate? Just roll over and it'll tell you. Transfer just means, hey, give them a drop date of today and then enroll them in another activity. Relocate means, hey, I put the kid in the wrong activity. We have a bunch of attendance. I need to physically move that kid to another activity along with all their attendance, okay? That makes more sense once you know you need it. You can run this student report here. It's a very generic name. We have tons of reports. This is just the one that's the most useful for the kids. And if you scroll down, it'll just tell you what they've done. Let's cancel that. So this kid, again, I've been using this test site for a long time. So this kid happens to be in all of these activities. These are all the days that they've been marked in these activities. And then a little calendar back here to show you which individual days they've attended the program, and so on. Another one of those things that'll just make sense once you get in and start doing real attendance for your site. Okay. Having said all that, here's all we did. I know that was very long-winded, but all we did, and all you do on a daily basis, is we went in here, we set up, well, today's, I don't know, 5/31, I guess. And that's it. So all the things that I mentioned them for your reference. You probably won't need to do them once you get your roster set up. You'll just go in, enter attendance, click save, and that's it. Go back to your dashboard. Now, that we're back on your dashboard. I didn't mention this earlier, but I should have made a note of the numbers there. They haven't changed even though you entered attendance. The reason is, in order to make the system even faster, we have a lot of the really tough calculations happen every night about 4 a.m. Used to be midnight, now it's around 4 a.m., but it'll happen every night. But if you can't wait, if you entered attendance and you really want it to happen now, you can just hit this recalculate button. When I click it, it just starts a little status bar there. And eventually it'll just refresh itself. And now the attendance that I've entered should have been added there. Okay? And so you've gone in, you've entered students, you've entered attendance, and now these numbers should all start making sense. So as you probably know, you've been given grant money. And scroll down here. Well, no, it's more up here. Okay? You've been given, this site has a fake after-school base grant of $25,000. Not realistic, but you can imagine, how that goes, right? You get credit for every student that you see, and it starts to fill these up here. Okay. The trick is knowing how many students you need to see. Now, if you have a single grant, you can probably calculate it. Some people have dual grants where they have two funding sources, and so that gets a little more complicated. Fortunately, once you do that, you come up here. We'll talk about exceptions in a second, but let me go back to the main page of this. It's basically telling me that I was supposed to see 16 kids per day for this fake grant. I'm only seeing 13, so I'm at -3. Okay, and so that should be an indicator that, hey, you're not meeting your grant goal, and you maybe reduce at some point. So you want to make sure that you recruit enough kids to see that number in full. And this is very similar. It's the same idea, but it's the percentage of the grant that you're below. So I'm seeing 3 less kids while I'm down 1% on my grant of where I should be today if I'm seeing the minimum required kids, and so on. If you have a supplemental grant, I'll show you those numbers as well. All right, some more stats here, and then a calendar that just shows you every day that attendance has been entered. Now I faked this a little bit, so it may not match what we just saw, but for example, I know first of all, I'm in calendar year 2017. I could change that to different configurations. So that means January 2017 to December 2017. Okay, so everything looks normal, right? January attendance, February, March, April. You had July off, part of June, July, and August off because that was summer, so that's okay. The system's not crying about it. But you'll notice these little red spots, and if you roll over the green spots, it'll just tell you how much attendance you've earned that day. Okay, just a quick thing. We have better reports, but that's just a quick way to see it. But if you see any red, hover over that, and it's going to say, well, no attendance was entered at the site, but the schedule listed it was an operational day. So you have to figure out what happened. Now maybe that's okay. Maybe there was some emergency at the school and they had to shut down the program. Maybe it was like a staff development day. As long as you let us know, we can get this little red thing off. But it's trying to warn you because we've had instances in the past where people just forget to enter attendance, and then it doesn't get picked up until way later in the year when they realize they're low on their grant. So this is just a good visual way of telling you what's going on and any errors. Okay. So we'll gloss over the rest of this stuff because it's a lot of the same type of numbers. It's just we want to make sure that you're aware of how your attendance is being earned and where it's going. So this site happens to have just the single grant, and they have 276 attendance. They've operated for 20 days. A little more useful than that, though, is this guy here, the 88 forecasting tool. Similar to these numbers up here. Let's go back to this first thing where it tells me that hey, I was supposed to see 16 kids per day. I've only saw 13. I'm going to go down here. It's going to give me the same information, a little more specific though. I was supposed to see 16 kids per day. On average, I've been seeing 13.8. I know that's a little weird. You can't have 0.8 kids, right? But we're dividing integers, so that's how that happens. I've operated 20 days. I have 160 days left in the school year. So it says, well, if I'm supposed to see 16 students per day to meet my grant, since I'm already low, I need to see 17 kids per day between now and the end of the school year in order to earn my grant. So that's a very important number right there. Is if you get if you're minus 3 kids in over 20 days, that's not so bad. If you're minus 3 kids over 100 days, that starts to get a little worse, and this number will reflect that. It'll tell you at any given point how many students you need to see between now and the end of the school year, and vice versa. If you're seeing too many kids or more kids than you need to, that number will go lower, and it'll start to say, well, you only need to see X number of kids to earn the grant. Usually not an issue, but for some sites it is. If it's a small school with a big grant, it becomes harder and harder to earn that grant. So this entire dashboard is just geared towards letting you know what's going on and making sure that everyone's aware of the attendance performance. Okay. The last part of this is just a bunch of charts. So 1 to 29 days, 30 to 59 days. This is how all the kids fall into these categories. Grade composition, and after you add students, ethnic composition, gender composition. You can view your attendance over the past several years, just using 1 year, 2 year, 3 year trends, and so on. And this is going to get longer as you make requests to us. We just keep adding things to this by request. Okay, so now I've talked for even longer. But remember, we haven't actually done anything, right? Well, we did. We entered attendance. We went in there. We entered attendance, right? And that was that. And then I talked for a very long time about what's on this dashboard, right? But you can just look at this yourself and try to figure it out and call us if you have any questions. We haven't really done much in the way of modifying anything. We've just learned things. So we still haven't done too much. I entered those students. I can go here to my student master list, and this is just a list of all the kids in the system. This browser is a little weird. I don't know why I'm using Safari, so it's that should line up there, but it doesn't. The difference between this and the activity list that you saw when we entered attendance is that different kids can be in different activities, and you don't want to have to try to guess. Like this fake kid's named Johnny Tsunami. You don't want to try to have to guess, oh man, where's Johnny Tsunami? How do I find him if I have 10 different activities, right? So you can go to the student master list and you can get all your students in one place, regardless of the activities they're in. And you could still run that same student report that we showed earlier. In fact, let me run it again just as a reminder. And there you go. And then so you would know, well, okay, Johnny Tsunami has, X number of days of attendance, right? 21 days of attendance. And this is where he got that 21 attendance. Okay. And so he's in all these activities. All right. And that's really all it does. So I could take that and again, as we said in the attendance page, you're going to see these a lot, these little controls up here, but I can make that bigger just so I can see it better. I could search for a specific student, right? It'll try to autofill for me. All right, there's John Doe. Let's get rid of that. And then I have some stuff here. So you can filter by grade level. You can just show participants only. So if we have any kids, we don't have any here, but if we had any kids with 0 days of attendance, you could just filter those out, if you only want to see your actual participants. And then you'll see some coming soon here. I told you we were working on import roster. Right now you can send those to us eventually. Very soon, actually, you'll be able to just click that. It'll ask you for an Excel upload, and then you can upload your own rosters and not have to deal with us. So lucky you. And then the other thing is, people see this page and they say, oh, that's great. I wish I could have that in Excel, because I need it for something or other. So go here, export to Excel, and there it is. Well, shows my preparation. My version of Office is giving me trouble, but you get the idea. It would be an Excel sheet of that, trust me. Okay, so I'm gonna let's go back to the dashboard. So we're back here. We've taken attendance. We've seen the student master list. The exception center, I'll mention it here just in a second. It tries to detect when there's an error, okay? So you go down here, you say, well, it says selected non-Hispanic, did not select race. Let me click here and see what the deal is. Okay, so I go to Elaine Bennis. Okay, let's look at her. It says, oh, okay, you said not Hispanic or Latino, but you didn't select a race. So let's say she's white. Okay. Oh, there we go. Now she's gone. Same thing with Jane Doe, and so on. So you either have to be Hispanic Latino or you have to be not Hispanic Latino, and then you have to select a race. And you could do both. You could say Hispanic Latino and Asian, if somebody was mixed, but that's why that's there. So it should be self-explanatory. If I go here, if anybody was missing a CSIS ID, they would show up there. You'd have to find it. Possible CSIS ID error format. The system is trying to figure out whether these are fakes. Obviously they are, right? And we would go in and fix them. I'm not going to fix them because I like using them as in this demo. But you could just fix that. You could retype in a new CSIS ID. Okay. Back to our dashboard again. And yeah, we can skip those because we don't need them. So the report center, last part. A host of reports. So favorite reports, let's just do those now. You have a list of tons of reports. Okay, those were the site level reports. So at the school level, it'll give you summaries and whatnot. We'll run a couple of those in a second. Student level reports are very similar reports, except that they'll have a row per student. So these get kind of long if you have a lot of students, but you get a lot more information. And the problem with having so many reports is that you probably only need 5 or 6 of them. And if every time you had to run, let's say what's a popular report? The 164 student days of attendance by range. And you had to go in here and click all this stuff, it'd get really annoying. So we added this feature, and we're able to, if you go to edit profile, we did that. That was one of the first things we did when we got into the system. We saw where you could, modify your user ID, your first name, your last name. We go down here, and now you'll see that you have this favorite reports thing. And this is a list of all the reports that are available to you. And if you wanted to, you could drill it down. If you knew, you knew what report you were looking for, I'm just going to type in range, and there's my 164 activity date, or days of attendance by date range. I could drag it over here. Nope. I could drag it over there. In fact, I'm going to drag this other one too. And click Save. And you'll notice here in Reports, I have a favorite reports. I could get to it very quickly from this side. I could also go to my Report Center, and there's a new section called Favorite Reports, and it's up here. It's still down here, but we moved it up to the top just to make it easier to access, okay? So let me close Favorite Reports. These reports, you can't break them, run them, So you know what they mean. We won't have time here for me to go through every report. Just run them and see what they do and ask questions as you see fit. I'll click on a couple of them. So again, we're on site level reports, site monthly statistics. And you'll notice at this site, we have, well, some stuff. Now remember that calendar I showed you on the homepage and this don't match up? That's on purpose. I wanted the calendar to be really, really explanatory of what it's supposed to do. So I faked that date a little bit. So don't look at this and say, hey, wait a minute, you said you had attendance in October on the homepage and now you don't. That's on purpose, okay? So there's a few different views. You can do the percent of grants earned monthly. Right now we are on attendance earned monthly. So in April they had 6 attendance, June they had 16, August they had a bunch. Let's click on August and see what happens. Okay. And so there's every day and how much attendance you've earned and which grant it went to, if you had multiple grants. Okay. You could do different months. I could go to February. Probably nothing there, right? Because we knew that for a fact already. I go there. Yeah, there's some attendance. One day was entered. And so on. You could print this if you wanted to. I saw something pop up, but again, Safari is a weird browser. I shouldn't have done this demo, but in Safari. But I promise you can print it. Okay. As with the other pages, right, there's a calendar year mode. I could do fiscal year, which goes from July to June 2018. Okay. And so on. So that's one report. Let me pick about 4 more just to show you. Let's see. ADA matrix. No. Oh, here's a good one. Monthly attendance report, daily summary. Let's go there. Right. I'll always have my filters here at the top. So I want to do. We said August had a lot of attendance, so let's try August. After school, refresh. It gives me a report. And there it is. When you view these reports in this little viewer here, you can zoom in first of all. You can make it bigger. You can go different pages if you had multiple pages. And this little guy here will let you do Excel, PDF, or Word. Okay. So I'm going to do PDF, but you could have done Excel and it would have exported this into Excel for you. And what this report does is just shows you a school, every day in that month, with weekends grayed out, and how much attendance you've entered those days. It's very good at producing summaries. Okay, let's go back. These ADA monthly, weekly, and daily, let's just run one. I don't know who uses this report. It was requested at some point. If you have reports that I don't have on here, just ask. We'll create them for you. And this is every week of the school year and the average number of kids that week. Okay, if that's ever useful for you. Now these are site level again, so it's only 1 row per site. And now if we go to student level, well, we see some of the same things we saw earlier, right? There's sign-in, sign-out sheets. So those sign-in and sign-out sheets that we printed out from the attendance page are right here as well. In fact, if I click on one of these, and I think I'm going to because I want you to see weekly, it'll have a few more options. You could print out a blank sign-in, sign-out sheet if you wanted to for different weeks, different activities. Right? If you didn't want to go and teach activity and print out a roster, you could go here and just print out all the rosters at once. And so on. The watermark could be darker or lighter. And just know that there's another way to get to these reports from the report center. And they'll usually have more options. Okay. Back here. Let's see. I'm going to pick a popular report here. And the reason it's popular is if you ever have an auditor come down, what they're going to want to do is take your sign-in, sign-out sheets, count them up, and match them to what's in the system. They're going to say, give me a report that shows me exactly what I'm looking for. So then the 175 is your friend. Monthly attendance report. Let's click that. So let's say they were looking at August, they counted them up. So you can do duplicated and unduplicated. And it's worth mentioning now that duplicated by activity just means that if you had kids in multiple activities, you want to be able to see what activities they were in separately. Unduplicated means nope. If a kid was in 5 activities in one day, I just want to see that one attendance counted. So it's unduplicated, okay? And then the ID type, I'm going to click ID. That'll make sense in a second, program. I'll click refresh. And for the sake of seeing this big, let's Let's do PDF. Okay, let me zoom in here, and what you're going to see, wish I would stop doing that, is the monthly attendance report, August 2017. It tells you that it was by student, unduplicated summary, and there's your list of students. There are their IDs. No activity because we said an unduplicated summary. And you will notice that for every day in that month, it shows whether or not they attended. For every student on each row, it'll tell you the total number of days they attended that month. For every day in the month, it'll tell you how many exits you have here. And then for the entire month, how many. So when an auditor comes in to count your attendance, they love this report because they could just do a count of, just Tuesday, and then they'll have the answer right there, and they can match it to what they calculated. They could pick 5 or 6 different students, add them up for a month, get their totals and add them up, and then they'd be able to do it easily from here to make sure that their numbers match and so on, and the number for the entire month. Okay. The point of all this was just there are tons of reports. By the time you guys are done with summer, there's probably going to be about 10 more because I have a list of reports that need to be created still. All very similar, but just different configurations for everything you see here. So without me talking too much more, just go ahead and run these and see what they do. No problem. Okay. So we're essentially done. I did look over my notes, and there's a couple of things that I skipped over. Right. This is the very quick intro. So I'm going to go into the attendance screen again. I'm going to go to my new roster, because one of the questions you're going to ask me as you're in here is you're going to say, how do I delete a student? Well, remember back to what I said. I'm not allowed to delete anything. I can hide things from you. I can't delete anything just because the auditors, someday might have a sign-in sheet where the kid was there and they're going to be like, wait, where is this kid? Why isn't he in your database? Your database is not auditable because it's, deleting data. So we don't delete anything. But let's say, for example, that Eric ERC here just stopped coming on 5/31. I could go here. I could say exit student. We don't use the term drop anymore because, people, it gave the impression of, the student's going to be deleted from the activity and their attendance is going to go away. So we use the term exit now. So if I exit the student, by default, he's given a drop date of the last date that he attended, which is that day. You'll notice I can't click Friday anymore. He has this little thing which says the student has a drop date within this week, but they will not show up after next week. So to prove that I'm not a liar, I'm going to go into the following week, and you'll notice that he's not there anymore. If for some reason you want to bring him back, well, that's very easy. You go back to the previous week. There he is. And if you click on his card, you'll notice that he's enrolled from 4/1 to 5/31, which is why he stopped showing up in June. I can just go back to Edit Student, give him a new exit date, and the world makes sense again. It doesn't like the fact that the activity start and end dates are these, and I'm trying to give him dates outside of those. Okay, so it's also protecting me from giving him a drop date of 6/30 when the activity actually ends on 6/7. So it's trying to protect me from doing something wrong. So let's just make it the activity start and end dates. Now the start date was 5/1. Now let's try that. And there we go. And you notice he doesn't have that little red mark anymore. Let's go home. I did skip over this, but it is worth mentioning. There's a staff module here. So if you ever have, you have a co-site lead and you say, oh, we need a new account, you can send that to us. We don't mind if you email that to us. Just give us their name, their email address, and then it will have a registration email go out to them. But if you wanted to do it yourself, you can go here to this Add New Staff. You say, what kind of staff are they? Well, they're going to need a login. This is a very special case of a staff member entered in the system with no login. So I go Site Admin, Continue, and it's going to ask me to enter some information about him. And once you click this down here, this Save, they will get a registration email and they'll be able to access the system the same way you do, if you need that. Okay. And the final bit of magic that I kind of glossed over, and it's worth mentioning here, is when you see these numbers, the type that say, well, you need to see that many students between now and the rest of the day, the rest of the school year, you'll notice that it's assuming that I've run, well, it knows that I run 20 days. It's assuming that I have 160 days left, okay? That's a 180-day school year. Not all districts run 180 days. Yours might. Some of them run 185. Some programs only run 177 days for whatever reason, because of how their grant was written. So we don't have to assume 180 days. We can go up here. This is where the site control panel thing comes into play. And you'll notice, well, you can change a lot of information. Minimum max grade level, we'll skip that stuff for now. But notice that your days of operation for the fiscal year and the calendar year are here. And you could modify that. So we have calendar year set to 180. If I said, well, we're actually going to run 175 days instead, watch what happens. I'll go to click save. I'm going to click recalculate just to be on the safe side. Now I'm running less days, which means I have less days left. And if I go down here, you'll notice, well, the number didn't change that much there. Probably because I only ran 20 days, but this did change here. And if it were a drastic change in the number of days, this number would also reflect that. Okay. The reason I didn't mention it ahead of time is that we're doing away with that. You'll have access to this thing here to modify those numbers, but in about, let's say 3 or 4 weeks from now, we are going to have a system in place where this is going to be tied to the actual district calendar, and so we'll know exactly how many days you have in the district calendar and how many regular school days you're supposed to add. So we'll set up really nice calendars. We can still modify those, but it'll be a little more formal than just saying, hey, well, you got more days, slide this number around, okay? So it'll be a lot more useful that way. And that's really it. This was the very quick intro, even if it didn't seem quick. I know I talk a lot. That's the quick intro. We have more videos coming out with detailed analysis on some of these features that we have here. But for now, when you get your registration email, you're going to get a phone number and an email address, along with all the other information. Let me go here. I'm going to go to our ERC data website. Go to team. This is me. I tend to do the high level stuff, like I'm the person creating the roster upload, and if you had a special sign-in sign-out sheet you wanted, that would go to me. But you go down here to a gentleman named Jet Vong. He will handle the day-to-day stuff. So if you have, passwords that need to be reset or user accounts need to be reset, you call the number that's in the email. You can talk to him. You email the address that's in the registration email. It will go to him and myself, and you'll get a response within about an hour. Okay, so don't think you're gonna leave a message and nobody's gonna get back to you for several days. We will get back to you almost immediately. If you call, they will put you through to one of us, but sometimes we step out of the office, so it's always better to email, and that way you can get the question written down properly, and you can get it answered very thoroughly. Okay. And so really that's it. Get in, enter some attendance. I will be contacting each of you to try to get the old attendance that you've been entering into Aries and Power School, whatever you're using, to get it extracted. I will load it into this system so that we have all these numbers filled in. And that should be a good start to entering your rosters, because it'll be all those kids. Now, you're going to be starting summer programs, so we'll have to figure out how to get the rosters in there. But for example, if you had a question on, well, how do I get you a roster from Aries? Export some kids into an Excel sheet. I'll tell you what you need. I will import those for you. So hopefully this was educational. Again, ask questions. I'm here to answer all of your questions. Thank you.